All right, let's dive into the world of the red squirrel. These guys, they're like a symbol of the British Isles, right? But they're facing some serious challenges these days. We're going to be looking at this article, The Decline of the Red Squirrel, How Invasive Species Transformed the British Isles. Hopefully we can figure out what's being done to help them out.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. It shows you how delicate these ecosystems really are and how even a small change can have huge effects, like a ripple effect.
So set the scene for us. What's the ideal world for a red squirrel look like?
Okay, so picture this. Ancient woodlands, sunlight filtering through the trees, beautiful conifers everywhere, and those trees, they're just covered in pine cones. That's like paradise for a red squirrel. They've got the claws for climbing, the teeth for cracking open those cones. They're perfectly suited for it. And historically, they thrived in those forests.
Until, well, they had some competition, right? I mean, the gray squirrels came over from North America. People thought that was a good idea at the time.
Yeah, back then it seemed like a pretty harmless idea. Just add a little bit of exotic flair to the estates. But those gray squirrels, they're survivors, incredibly adaptable. They weren't as picky about their food as the red squirrels, so they were able to spread into all kinds of different environments, and they did it way faster than those reds ever could.
And I'm guessing they weren't exactly sharing the snacks either, were they?
No, no, not really. The gray squirrels were bigger, they were bolder, and let's be honest, they just outcompeted the reds for food for those good nesting spots. It put the red squirrels at a huge disadvantage.
So already not looking good for our little red squirrel friends. But it gets worse, right? There's something even more dangerous than just competition.
Unfortunately, yes. It's a tough reality of how easily diseases can spread, especially between different species. The gray squirrels, they brought this silent threat with them, the squirrelpox virus.
Oh, that does not sound good. I think I know where this is going.
Sadly, yeah. It's as bad as it sounds. See, gray squirrels can carry the virus, but they're immune. But for red squirrels, it's devastating. Often fatal, actually. It's just been ripping through their populations.
So they're losing their habitat, they're dealing with all this competition, and on top of that, this horrible virus that's, what, a triple whammy? No wonder they're having a tough time. Man, that is just heartbreaking. But people are trying to help, right? They're not just letting these little guys disappear.
Oh, absolutely not. There are some really dedicated people out there fighting for them, and, they're tackling it from different angles. One of the big ones is habitat management, basically trying to create, red squirrel sanctuaries.
Well, like planting the kind of trees they need, making sure there's enough food.
Exactly. But it's actually even more involved than that. Remember those conifers we talked about? Well, it's not just about having any conifers. Red squirrels do best when you've got a good mix of tree species, especially the ones that produce lots of cones, consistently.
Wow, so they really have to, plan it all out.
Yeah.
It's like being what do you call it, a landscape architect, but for squirrels.
Yeah, kind of. They really do look at things like the seed production cycles and all that to make sure there's a steady food supply.
That is pretty amazing.
Right.
But what about, I mean, the gray squirrels aren't just going to pack up and leave, right? They like these spots too.
Yeah, you're right. And that's where things get, well, a little more complicated. We have to talk about gray squirrel control.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of wondering about that. How do you even begin to?
Yeah, it's definitely a sensitive subject. It basically means reducing the number of gray squirrels in certain areas. And, it's usually done as humanely as possible. But it's tough because you've got people with strong feelings on both sides. Some say it's the only way to save the red squirrel. Others think we shouldn't interfere.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a tough one. No easy answers, right? But hey, you mentioned something earlier about, a surprise hero in this whole thing. Something about a pine marten. What is a pine marten, anyway?
Right, so pine martens, they're actually a native predator here. They'd almost completely vanish, but they're starting to make a comeback in some places. And get this, they actually prefer hunting gray squirrels over red squirrels.
No way. Seriously. Why is that? Are gray squirrels just, easier to catch or something?
Well, it actually has to do with their behavior. Remember how we said gray squirrels are less dependent on trees? Well, they spend a lot more time foraging on the ground, and that makes them easy targets for a pine marten. Red squirrels, on the other hand, they're usually up in the trees, so they're a bit safer.
So the pine marten coming back is actually a good thing to the red squirrel. It's like Nature's way of balancing things out again.
Yeah, exactly. It shows you how important it is to maintain those natural balances. And there's actually research to back this up. In places where the pine martens have returned, the red squirrel populations have stabilized, and in some cases, they've even started to grow again.
Okay, now that is good news. But it can't all be on the pine martens, right? What are scientists doing to help the red squirrels directly?
Well, there's some amazing research going on. One of the big focuses is understanding the squirrelpox virus itself. They're actually looking into developing a vaccine or some kind of treatment that could help protect the red squirrels.
Wow, a vaccine for squirrels. That's wild.
It is really cutting edge, but that's not all. They're also looking at the genetics of red squirrel populations.
Okay, now you're getting a little technical for me. What are they looking at in their DNA?
Basically, they're searching for any genetic traits that might make some squirrels naturally resistant to the virus. If they can find those genes, then they can focus on protecting the populations that already have a better chance of survival. They're also they're doing this thing called habitat modeling. Have you ever heard of that?
Habitat modeling. No, that's a new one. What is that? Some kind of squirrel matchmaking service?
No, but that's funny. It's actually like, imagine using really high-tech maps to figure out the absolute best places for red squirrels to live. They look at things like the types of trees, how much food is available, even where the predators are, and then they can use all that to create like a blueprint for red squirrel conservation.
So they're using all this like high-tech stuff to help these little guys out. Pretty cool.
It is, right. Combining all this knowledge we have about like ecology, animal behavior, genetics, all to give them a chance.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. Conservation, it's not as simple as I thought. It's not just, save the cute animal. It's about the whole picture.
Yeah, you got it. Everything's connected.
Hmm.
And there's no magic solution, no one thing that'll fix everything. It's got to be a team effort.
And it's not just scientists in labs, right? You were saying earlier that everyday people can actually get involved too. How does that work?
Oh, for sure. There's this whole thing called citizen science, and it's super important. All over the UK, there are volunteer groups making a real difference. They go out, track squirrel sightings, help researchers collect data, all sorts of things.
That's awesome. Sounds like a fun way to get involved. But what about people like me who, maybe aren't cut out for field work? Can we still do something?
Definitely. Supporting organizations doing this work, even just spreading awareness, it all helps. Talk to people, share information online. The more people know about what these red squirrels are up against, the better.
So true. Sometimes just getting the word out is half the battle.
Well, after this deep dive, where do things stand? Is there hope for the red squirrel?
I'd say there's definitely hope. Yeah, it's tough. They're facing some serious challenges. But the people fighting for them are incredible, so dedicated. With all the research, the conservation efforts, and the public support, I think there's a real chance for these little guys to, keep thriving in those British woodlands for a long, long time. That's what I like to hear. It's a good reminder that we can actually make a difference when we all work together, right?
Absolutely. We're all part of this amazing web of life, and it's up to us to take care of it.
Beautifully said. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of the red squirrel. Hope you learned something new today, maybe even feel inspired to get involved. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious about the natural world around us.